Okay, hello and welcome to the evolution of aircraft noise from the 1970s to present day, 2025. Aviation is widely believed to be greatly contributing to the noise pollution epidemic. So what is it, where does it come from, and what's being done about it? Let's start with talking about how air travel has increased since the 1970s. So here we've got our little sample plane from the 1970s, and then we've got all these sample planes representing our present day air travel. For every aircraft flying in the 1970s, there are 9.8 flying today, which is a 980% increase. So that is pretty drastic. Get rid of those little lines right there. So that's pretty drastic. You would think, most people would think, that because we're seeing such an increase in air travel, we're also going to see a similar increase in noise, aircraft noise, people complaining about it disrupting people's lives. But when we move over to this graph here, we can see that despite this massive increase, the number of individuals exposed to aircraft noise over 65 decibels, that's going to be important for later, went from 7 million people in the 1970s to about 400,000 in present day. So we can see two pretty drastic drops here, or at least two that are significant enough. We've got this really big one that's going from the 1970s to the year 2000. What we're seeing there is just the modernization of aircraft. We're transitioning to aircraft with more effective engines, and those engines also happen to be quieter. So that limited the amount of people experiencing aircraft noise by about 90%. This little section here, we can also see a little bit of a drop there. That is due to 14 CFR Part 35. All 14 CFR is taking this natural progression of modernized aircraft and turning it into law. So the FAA basically said, we don't want to see this huge decrease over 30 years just to see a huge increase back up. Because 2007, we weren't seeing any slowing down of the amount of aircraft in our airspace, right? We were actually just seeing it increase, and we're still seeing it increase today. So CFR Part 35 just made it into a law that we had to continue on with these quieter aircraft overall. But let's talk about that 65 decibel number. Why does it matter? The 65 decibels was declared by the Aviation Safety and Noise Abatement Act of 1979. 65 decibels is disruptive enough to be noticed, but not disruptive enough to cause damage. So, unfortunately, that's kind of where all of these numbers and studies are taking place. We're not seeing specific studies on people exposed to higher levels of aviation noise, partially because that number is so small. If we have 400,000 experiencing 65 decibels plus, we're going to see a much, much smaller sample size for people experiencing 75, 85, 95 decibels. Those decibels that would cause hearing damage. So that is a little bit disappointing, but let's look at some examples of what else would be 65 decibels, because unless you're an audiologist, it's really hard to visualize and make it kind of tangible what that means. So a conversation between friends, honestly quieter than I'm talking now, a dishwasher running, a little background music, those are all going to be about 65 decibels. So, you'll notice it, you'll hear it, but it's not going to be this kind of nagging in your ear, anything that's going to be disruptive or damage your hearing. So let's talk briefly about where's that noise coming from. Most people would assume, and they'd be correct in assuming, it's coming from our engines right here. So I don't have a scientific statistic for how much of the noise is coming from engines, because all of this is kind of happening at once, right? But it's mostly coming from these engines. And we're not talking about small aircraft where that engine is going to be in the nose, under the hood, really quiet. We're talking about these big 737s with these huge engines under the wings. That's where that noise is going to come from. We also have the sound of tires on runways. So either that initial landing impact or the braking is going to be really loud, and that's also going to contribute to the noise. Both of these, you'll notice, are things that kind of take place during takeoffs and landings. So, where is the airport in relation to people? Is it close to a town? Is it close to to a population of people, or even a population of animals? And who's going to be disrupted by all that aircraft noise? Let me go back over here. So this is 400,000, right? Imagine if SeaTac was even 10 miles closer to Seattle. You're going to see this number increase just by that 10-mile movement of SeaTac closer to Seattle. The location of the airport in relation to a large population is really important to minimizing who is being affected by aircraft noise. So we've talked a little bit about what's happened in the past to address aircraft noise, but 400,000 is a significant amount of people, and we're only talking about 65 decibels. So there are people who are hearing 55, 45 decibels and are still a little irritated with the volume of aircraft noise that they're experiencing, right? So, sure, we have the Aviation Safety and Noise Abatement Act, we have the 14 CFR, but moving forward, the FAA has started a continuous lower energy emissions and noise program. This program specifically focuses on lowering the cumulative aircraft noise by 32 decibels. So, this isn't necessarily relevant to our 65 number, right? Because that's just this number of people who are experiencing aircraft noise over this level. But it's talking about lowering all engine noise, even the ones that the noise that's not affecting people, lowering that by 32 decibels, which is going to shrink this number here, this 400,000, because fewer people are going to be hearing 65 decibels. And hopefully going forward, we'll see a study about people who are affected by 32 decibels and more. So it's all about, going forward, how can we make this less disruptive? Some things that the CLEAN program are going to focus on is how can we make electric airplane engines, because electric engines are going to be that much quieter than our fuel engines. It's also going to lower emissions, which is a huge concern. And that lowering of emissions, lower energy, and lower noise are all wrapped into each other. How can we make air travel the most beneficial to people with the fewest repercussions? So that is pretty much all I have for you. Down here I've got my sources if you'd like to take a look at those. And thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.